Chapter 8. Orgrim hand-picked those who would ride with him. Kirknall told him exactly where his party had found the prince.
"I wish I could go with you,"
the older orc said.
"Let others have some glory too,"
Durotan said. It was his custom to rotate rest with activity, for several reasons, not least of which was every orc wanted the honor of bringing home a kill. Privately, he wished he too were riding out with his friend.
"Orgrim needs something to restore his pride. He is losing his edge."
"He has no edge," quipped Nokra. "He has the Doomhammer." Everyone laughed. Durotan could feel the shift in energy among his clan. Fresh meat would lift everyone's spirits and give everyone strength. Orgrim's party was cheered when they rode out shortly afterward. They would not return for at least 2 days. He hoped they would be successful. Even the supply of dried fish was becoming depleted. He instructed an orc called Delgar to round up a few others to bundle up against the elements and fish in the ice, deflecting the complaints calmly. Gaia watched them go. "You lead well, my son," she said. "Your father would have had to threaten a Makgora to make Frostwolf warriors go fishing."
"Fishing is hunting too,"
he said.
"At least, now it is."
"I will be visiting the outskirts," she told him, speaking of the scattered huts further away from the communal fire in the heart of the village. "I have been promised some dried roots for a stew tonight. Perhaps it will be fish stew." The attack came at midday. Durotan was in the shaman hut, speaking with Drektar, when he heard the wolves howling. It took him an instant to realize that the howls were not in the center of the village, but to the south, the fringes of the Frostwolf encampment Gaia had gone to visit. A heartbeat later, he had seized Thunderstrike and was atop Sharptooth, speeding south toward the savage noises. There were 6 red walkers, all covered with those sinister, bloody handprints, and they attacked with a savage vigor. 2 Frostwolves lay motionless on the ground. Gaia was screaming battle cries, brandishing a small hand axe as she charged one of the strange orcs, who was laden down with a sack of ground nuts. Other Frostwolves, most of whom were artisans or older children, had snatched up makeshift weapons and were charging their attackers with a courage that made Durotan's heart simultaneously soar and break. He bore down on the red walker stealing the sack and ran him through with Thunderstrike. The orc stared at him blankly, spitted like a tulbuck's haunch on the fire. Another one seemed infuriated by the attack and ran at some of the children. They jumped on him, attacking him with small carving knives, holding him off until Kagra, Nokra's mate, came after him with a mace and crushed his head. Gaia hurled her small hatchet at another red walker. It caught him between the neck and the shoulder, and he stumbled. Snarling, she leapt on him, worked the hatchet free, and dispatched him. Other frost wolves were riding from the center of the village now, armed with axes and hammers and their righteous fury. Another red walker fell before them. The remaining 2 panicked and turned to flee. One clutched an armload of fur, the other a barrel of salted fish. Grukag and Durotan ran them down. As he stared down at the still twitching corpses, panting, Durotan realized 2 things. 1. None of the frost wolves living on the fringes of the village were safe. All would need to move in as close to the center as possible. And 2. The attack had come when nearly all the warriors had been gone, either fishing or hunting, which meant that the red walkers had been observing the encampment for some time. He looked up at Gaia. Their eyes met, and he realized she understood as well.
"Everyone," he said, "pack your belongings. You all will dwell close to the main fire from now on."
The fishing and hunting parties were recalled by riders sent after them by Durotan, instructing them all to return to aid their fellow clan members as they moved their lodgings. At last, the final families arrived with their simple belongings, a few pieces of furniture, hides, and their allotted winter stores. Other orcs would take them in until new huts could be built. Durotan and Orgrim set down the last items, accepted the family's thanks, and went to join Drektar by the communal fire pit.
"The children are older,"
Durotan observed.
"That happens with children,"
Orgrim deadpanned. The appetizing scent of roast talbuk wafted into the crisp late autumn air. Though interrupted, Orgrim's hunt had been at least somewhat successful. A flicker of amusement rippled through Durotan. He shoved his friend, who laughed, snorted, and reached to cut another hunk of meat as it turned on the spit. Then the young chieftain grew sombre.
"I have seen no newborns,"
he said, and Orgrim sobered as well.
"Neither have the wolves littered," Orgrim said. "Nor were many calves born to the herds this year."
"There is wisdom in that," Durotan mused.
"Fewer mouths to feed when supplies are scarce."
"Yes," said Drektar, who was sitting with them and reaching his hands toward the warmth. "Wisdom. The spirit of life understands ebb and flow. But if there are no new calves to grow into adults, what have we to eat? If there are no sturdy young orcs born to the clan, what will become of the Frostwolves?" He turned his blind face in Durotan's direction. "Your attentiveness has saved lives, Durotan." Durotan scowled and shook his head.
"Had I been more attentive, the Red Walkers might not have dared attack."
"Even so, do not belittle what you have done that has been worthwhile. Children who might have starved to death with lesser care live to play by the fire tonight. But attentiveness cannot create life."
"Has the spirit of life come to you, then?"
Drektar shook his head. "The spirits come less often to me in these times. But I do not need to have visions or messages to know something this simple. The clan is strong and healthy for now. But now is not tomorrow." The words were heavy to Durotan. He thought of Gul'dan and his promises of a new land, fertile and green and bursting with life. He wondered if the warlock and his horde had already departed, bound for this mysterious place. Durotan recalled the unsettling hue of Gul'dan's skin, the green glow in his eyes, the dead things with which he chose to adorn his body. He shook himself. Everything in him, and in Gaia, Garad, and Drektar, told him that whatever the warlock promised, it would come at a price. A burst of laughter came from the newly settled family, free, joyful, and content. The clan was strong and healthy for now, and for now, Durotan would let that be enough. The winter was brutal. It came hard on the heels of a dry autumn that yielded wizened fruit and a frost that bit deep. The firewood that had been gathered with muttered complaint in the summer now kept them warm. The dried flesh they had refrained from eating when it dripped sweet juices was now a leathery comfort when snowstorms raged outside, and there was no thought of hunting. As the clan clustered about the life-giving fire, Durotan told young ones tales about his father and his own first hunt, where he learned what it truly meant to be a Frostwolf. He encouraged Gaia to tell stories of Garad in his prime and of himself as a child. He invited the elderly orcs who could no longer hunt or fight to sit by the communal fire and share recollections of when they were young. His only request was that the tales uplift, inspire laughter, or otherwise make our clan better for the hearing of them. The Frostwolf Clan survived the winter with no loss of life from cold or lack of food. And when spring finally returned, the nuts and seeds so carefully stowed away were planted and tended to. No one spoke in whispers any more of Garad being cut down. No one mentioned Gul'dan, unless it was to condemn his fear-mongering. And Gaia told her son that his father would have been proud. Durotan did not reveal to anyone, not even Orgrim, with whom he shared so much, how he lay awake at night counting barrels of dried grains in his head, or wondering if there were enough kevak leaves to ease the coughing of one of the little ones, or how he constantly battled a sense of doubt that he was doing the wrong thing. He knew enough of his parents' interaction to know that Garad turned to his mate for advice and counsel. Doubtless he had been able to confide his fears to her as well. But although it would likely have been wisdom to have chosen a mate, Durotan did not feel any stirring in his heart. Perhaps it was simply too weighted down.